Take Mumbai, for example. Time and again, we have heard that the financial capital has been forced to manage more headcounts that it can actually manage. Now, such factors can deteriorate the quality of life, not just in Mumbai, but all the cities which exist in India. So it becomes essential to focus on such parameters. If our cities have to be smart, and to give us an insight on this, we have with us today Amit Khanna, the design principal of Amit Khanna Design Associates, a firm which is known to integrate architecture, construction, and sustainability to produce award winning and globally recognized buildings. So let's welcome Amit Khanna.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and take you through, what is my understanding of how we should be approaching this particular problem of what exactly a smart city is. And I'm going to start here, which is, Vikas just mentioned Bombay. This is Bombay for you, right? Bombay is a lot of people in one place, but it's very divided. You have a lot of people who have access to services, and then you have some people, a large percentage of the population that doesn't have access to services. This photograph, which is a drone shot, highlights that difference, and it sort of brings into focus the issue that we're dealing with. When we're talking about urban areas, we're talking about the life that people are living in urban areas. And we're talking about, principally speaking, what does it mean to live in a city? And so I want to share with you these three key metrics that are no longer projections, but pretty much, this is something that is the basis for all the development. More than half of the world now does live in urban areas. This has been true for over 15 years now. I think the figure is closer to 58% now. And most of the next, 2.5 billion people that will come into cities will be in Africa and Asia. And out of that, you're going to see Indian cities double in size, which doesn't mean that Delhi and Bombay are going to become, Delhi is not going to go from 28 million to, let's say, 56 million, and Bombay is not going to go to, let's say 40. But Indian cities in general are going to grow. The previous speaker mentioned Bhubaneswar. And all of these tier 2 cities are going to become mega cities in their own right. And just to give you a sense of, how urbanized we are, when you look at the developed world, you find that there is a high degree of urbanization in places like North America, Europe, but Asia is still below the worldwide average, right? If the worldwide average is about 55, Asia is still a little bit below. However, a lot of the growth that has come for urban areas has come from Asia and Africa. If you look at this chart, starting from 1950, it's projected to 2030. Most of the growth which is happening in the red and the blue bars, which is Asia and Africa. This is a slide I picked up, it's about 20 years ago, this figure came out by the UN, that this is where the largest cities of the world are. And you can see already they're beginning to concentrate in Asia and Africa. And then this is something that was projected, I think about 8 years ago, that, and again, if you look at this chart, you find that 3 out of the top 5 cities, which are considered Asia's mega cities, are in India. So there's Delhi, there's Mumbai, there's Calcutta. And when we look at urban life, right, when we're discussing urban life, we look at three key metrics, right? We look at quality of, we look at walkability, right, and we look at public transport, and we look at housing. And this is what is sold to us in terms of that. This is what good quality housing, good quality, public infrastructure looks like. But the reality is that we encounter urban spaces that look more like this. We see very poor quality housing. We see privatized use of transport. So rather than, a robust public transit system in place in most of the larger cities, we are over-reliant on private infrastructure. And much of that infrastructure is informally built, which means that it is outside the purview of what is normally considered the smart cities program. So it is being done in informal developments, in villages, in urbanized villages, in slums, etc. But I think that, whenever I present this, I'm always told that, Amit, you're giving us a doomsday scenario about cities in general. But I think the issue is not that it's not the end of the world, but it's the end of a process that we used to follow. We're so used to having a master plan based, or a 5-year plan based, or a, programmatically based approach to solutions delivery in cities, where you plan something and then you design it and you deliver it. And I think what is happening is that idea has unraveled over the past century or so. So it was a great idea 100 years ago, and it just isn't true anymore, because the pace of development is much faster than the pace at which governments or quasi-governmental bodies can provide solutions. And if you look at the three kinds of solutions that are out there, I mean, neither one of these is something that we need to or we should be looking to adopt. These are three basic ways of achieving density in cities, right? You can either go for the mega tower block model, which is the Dubai model, which is, even though you have thousands of acres and square kilometers of space, you concentrate people into buildings, because buildings are can be air conditioned, etc. The other is the central image, is the American model, where you have, suburban housing which goes on for miles and miles and miles. And the third one is something which is pretty similar to what we follow in suburban India, which is we have tower blocks and they're connected with highways. So we tend to build ring roads, and then we tend to build, private development around it. But what is truly shaping our cities? This is a photograph from Delhi. Those of you who are in Delhi will recognize that this is Sangam Vihar and Scenic Farms. And this is such a sharp contrast, because Sangam Vihar is a informal settlement. It used to be a small village, and now it has, a density of 400 people per acre, 400 units per acre. On the other hand, Scenic Farms is, a place where the affluent in Delhi live, and the average density is less than half a dwelling unit per acre, because the average size is more than an acre. And what we find is that when we try and look at cities, we look at cities and try and analyze them and predict what is going to happen. But cities evolve very fast. I mean, if you look at this picture looks like any tier two, urbanizing city from China, Asia, perhaps even Africa. But what this picture is actually this 20 years ago. So this is the Pearl River Delta in Shanghai as it looked 20 years ago, and now it looks like this. And it's not like you could have predicted that this would happen in any particular city. What you have to do is you have to allow for this to occur instead of mandating how it happens. And when you look at how India is urbanizing overall as compared to the other emerging markets, the rate of urbanization is slightly more. And within India, of course, it's concentrated in the more affluent parts of India, but it's not to say that regions like UP and Bihar are not urban, right? They are also slowly moving there. And I'm going to just skip over that. Principally speaking, we're looking at urban growth, which is sort of exploded while city planners have struggled to catch up. And so the idea of density is the idea of density is something I like to talk about. I'm going to give you a small example of Delhi, and I'm going to wrap up after this. Is if you look at the master plan for Delhi in 2021, it had a zoned approach towards how people should live. And I think that what happens is when you try and isolate areas for different functional uses, you find that public transit does not work. Public transit works on the basis that there is a lot of people in every area, which can be serviced by a network of light rail, etc. But the way our cities have been planned, the way our cities are currently being planned, is that we're still zoning them. And I think the one point that I want to leave you with is that you don't need to have zoned development in cities. It's a Victorian idea, it's a modernist idea from the 1920s. It's just not relevant anymore. What you need is mixed use development, which is supported by density and which can be catered to by public infrastructure, which is transit and services delivery. And I'm going to leave you with this slide, which is that this is the potential savings that you can anticipate from the reduction in capital requirements for urban infrastructure if urban growth is more compact. To give you an example, if for those of you who are familiar with Delhi, if you think about trying to service just whatever is inside outer ring road versus trying to service what is inside the Kundli, Manesar and Palwal ring road, it's an enormous amount of area that needs to be serviced by the government, right? And so if you create density and you create infrastructure to support that density, you have a much better chance for producing a smarter city. Thank you.